This is the Chris DeGaulle Show podcast.
Okay, guys, let's just rip. And Chris DeGaulle.
Chris DeGaulle. Chris, thanks for being with me tonight.
Chris DeGaulle.
I'm joined now by Chris DeGaulle.
Now, he puts the broad in broadband. It's Chris DeGaulle.
The Chris DeGaulle podcast is presented by usmedicalplan.com. Save big money monthly and get better health coverage at usmedicalplan.com.
It's Friday, the 8th day of September. Thank you so much for downloading the Chris DeGaulle Show podcast. Coming up today, Dr. Peter McCollough is back. He has been a show favorite of many of you throughout COVID. He was one of the most consistent doctors, a heart doctor, a cardiologist by training, but has studied COVID and the medicinal reactions to COVID, the shot, the mandates, the masks, and also the natural way to treat COVID if you catch it, the latest variants. What does he make of that? And does he recommend shots and boosters and all of that? You'll hear a clip of Joseph Ladapo, who's been a guest of this show too, the Surgeon General of Florida. He's been very clear about what he thinks about this new booster coming out and what you ought to know about it. New polling numbers, I kind of touched on this yesterday, but CNN has been pouring over them. It's of registered voters, keep in mind, but it's abysmal. Everybody's really almost shocked. Democrats are quite literally announcing they're very scared of what these data points are inside this poll. A lot of you are dubious and don't really believe what you see and don't really believe that they're nervous. I recognize that, but I don't have any doubt that what you're being told, that the economy is great and everybody's got a job, and it's just not the way people feel. Every poll that seems to suggest it is so. So we'll get into some of that. Peter Navarro, also who's been a frequent guest of this show, Donald Trump's trade representative, he's just been convicted of, what do they call that? I'm forgetting. So it was a late night last night, folks. I stayed up late and watched that abysmal Chiefs game. The Chiefs dropped one to Detroit. Oh, that was rough. I know we're not a sports show, so I'm not going to get into it, but I'm exhausted. Contempt of Congress. That's what it was, which almost never happens, but he was found guilty of contempt in Congress, so I'll unpack some of the details of that. But yeah, I'm in a fog from that Chiefs game. Oh man. And it's a busy weekend this weekend. I'm actually on my way to Philadelphia, where I'll have several different events. I've got an event with Ray Didinger on Sunday at the Uptown Theater, Westchester, Pennsylvania. Tommy and Me is his play. You can go to the Uptown Theater in Westchester's website and get tickets. It's just before football kicks off for Eagles fans on Sunday. So be able to do that. I've got, Monday's our Faith and Freedom event, which if you're in the Philadelphia metro area, that's in Warminster, Bucks County at the Fuge. Dennis Prager and Mike Gallagher and I will be hanging out. And Tuesday I'll be at Chapman Windows, Doors, and Siding, one of our great sponsors on the radio in Philadelphia. I'll be out there from 6 to 8 o'clock. So a couple of stops in Westchester, one in Bucks County in the Philadelphia area. So I hope to see you out there if you're in that listening area. John Ruhlman, doesn't matter whether you're in Pennsylvania, whether you're in Missouri, Kansas, Illinois, California, down in Nashville, Tennessee, Florida, or Texas, New York, or wherever you listen. All over the country, John Ruhlman can save you money. By the way, he's a Bengals fan. Don't hold that against him. John Ruhlman is a trusted name in private health insurance. It still exists. There are 80 different private health insurance companies out there that John knows, as a matter of fact, and he will do the research for you. You tell him about the insurance policy you pay for right now out of your own pocket. Let him comb through the coverage. What you may find is you're not well covered enough. What you may find is your coverage is okay, but you're paying way too much. Do you want to save 30 to 60% on your health insurance costs? I'm sure you do. The most dramatic example I know is of a personal friend who's saving $2,000 a month because he made this call, and he's insuring his family of four with better coverage for $2,000 a month less. Small business owners, no brainer. Young people, you need health insurance. Don't go through life without it. If you're a reasonably healthy younger person and you don't have health insurance, it doesn't have to cost an arm and a leg to get you covered. If in fact you have something really bad happen medically and you're hospitalized, you'll still get an income. Seniors, same deal. You're spending way too much on that precious income you're trying to live off of for the rest of your life. You don't have to spend so much money on a supplemental plan for your Medicare coverage. So go to chrisstegall.com and read everything there is to know about John Ruhlman at usmedicalplan.com, or you can watch the video And John and I have a great conversation about health insurance where we talk about all manners of things. I think you'll learn a lot from that if you want to get a sense of who he is before you call. But I do hope you will call and research this because it could save you big-time money. usmedicalplan.com or 877-410-4321. I was kind of watching this as CNN was rolling out with it yesterday morning, and I hadn't had time to go through it all. Kellyanne Conway says she's been doing polling for 30 years, and she has never seen numbers like this before. She says it's absolutely devastating, as I tweeted yesterday. And remember, this is of registered voters. This is not of likely voters. So you can assume, I do anyway, you can assume that people that are likely voters are actually much more informed, and this is even worse for him. She says, I've been doing polling for over 30 years. I have never seen so many negatives visited upon one president, including from his own party in a single poll than today's CNN poll. Here's some of the takeaways. Ability to serve, 74%, including a majority of Democrats, do not think Joe Biden has the stamina and sharpness to serve effectively as president. As you hear these numbers that are abysmal, consider why they would be rolling these out. Why are these so aggressively bad? And again, it's registered voters, not likely voters. So you're talking about a population of people that are just on voter rolls. They may not even be participating next year. We have which actually makes this worse for him. Electability problems. 67% of Democrats wish the party would nominate someone other than Biden. Biden loses to nearly every Republican tested in the general election matchup. That I pointed out to you yesterday. I put that graphic up on social media. Chris Christie beats Joe Biden head-to-head in this poll. In fact, the only candidate of the entire Republican field that does not beat Joe Biden, and he only loses by 1 point to Joe Biden head-to-head, is Vivek Ramaswamy. Trump ties him. No, sorry. DeSantis tied him. Trump beat him by a point or two. Failing on policy. 58% said Biden's policies have made economic conditions in the U.S. worse. 70% say things in the country are going badly. 39% approve of the job he's doing overall. Biden's personal image is cratering. Now, if anything else, Joe Biden, aviator glasses, licking the ice cream, kindly grandfather, right? A majority say Biden does not care about people like themselves. 72% say he doesn't inspire confidence. No, I wouldn't think. And then finally, no one is buying Biden's lies. 61% say Biden did have some involvement in his son Hunter's business dealings in Ukraine and China while serving as vice president. That's right. 61% of respondents in this poll, registered voters at CNN, believe Joe Biden was doing business with Hunter while he was vice president, which again goes to affirm what is just true. Was there election interference in 2020? You damn sure bet there was. And this poll proves that as Americans figure out what this story is about Hunter Biden globetrotting and bagging money, when Americans hear that story and were given the information they needed, they made the decision this guy is corrupt. 61% of respondents. So again, as the polls bore out, if the American media, colluding with the Department of Justice, the FBI, and the 51 intelligence agency officials who had all signed off on a letter saying Hunter Biden's laptop was Russian disinformation, and media outlets said, we are not going to report on this laptop. We're not even going to talk about Hunter Biden because it is fake news. Joe Biden himself during the debate said, that's been totally discredited. That's a lie. 51 intelligence agents. Remember, he was debating with Trump on this. Trump brings up this very issue. And Biden says, nope, lie. That's a lie. I have 51 pals who signed off on a letter that said that's a lie. And that was allowed to stand. Beyond this destructive husk's policies or his lack of leadership or inspiring confidence or this rotten economy, That one story alone, the belief by most Americans, registered voters surveyed in this poll, that 61% of them believe Joe Biden was doing dirty deals with his son, bagging money from foreign governments while he was vice president, is proof positive to me. He would not be president today, even through COVID, if the American people had known this story and it had been fully vetted and told. It's so frustrating. And it is for this reason that he shouldn't be impeached. You know, Lurch, our vegetable, we call a United States Senator in Pennsylvania, John Fetterman, is out there goading Republicans to impeach him. I want to take him up on it. They should have moved to impeach Joe Biden on this one issue alone. Remember, impeachment's political, folks. It's not a legal impeachment is a political tool. And as such, Joe Biden, if you're not convinced, if you read those numbers and you hear what I just read to you and you're not convinced the American people believe it is totally warranted that Joe Biden be impeached, I don't know what to tell you. And the Republicans don't seem to be moving. Here's my nana. Did he actually utter this himself? I'm reading the transcription. I have not actually heard him say this. Does he get this out?
He does, yeah.
Oh, he's improving out there. Did he practice it, you think?
Well, it was edited. So I clipped it. It was from MSNBC, and they had edited it together.
Oh,
so
I see. Okay, so John Fetterman sounds like a tough guy when they pre-record the interview and then splice it up to make it sound like he has one long, cogent thought without pausing. Okay, we'll take a listen here.
Go ahead and do it. I dare you. If you can find the votes, go ahead and you're going to lose. Your man has 3 or 4 indictments now, and you're going to. So like I said, sometimes you just got to call their bull.
Yeah. Sometimes you got to call their bull excrement. He says, "Where was this?"
This was not like an official interview. This was just him speaking with.
Yeah, but who was he talking to? Do you know? Was that like a campaign stop, or that sounds almost like it was an undercover campaign stop event, like somebody had a cell phone recording him saying this at some picnic lunch or something.
It was with a group. Let me.
No, that's all right. I don't care where specifically. I just mean this was right. This was like cell phone video of him speaking candidly somewhere.
Yes. Correct.
Okay. Go ahead, do it. I dare you. If you can find the votes, go ahead, because you're going to lose. Your man has 3 or 4 indictments now, and you're going to, so like I said, sometimes you just got to call their bull excrement. So Fetterman says Republicans can't even find the votes to impeach Joe Biden. Fetterman says go ahead and do it, call their bull excrement. What does Trump's indictments have to do with Joe Biden? See, in their minds, you know what that is, actually? That's an admission that what they did to Donald Trump, the impeachment, was never serious. He doesn't actually see impeachment as meaningful. He sees it as nothing more than just a partisan political weapon, which is, of course, what it was when they did it to Trump twice. And so he figures what he thinks this is not a rebuke from Congress. He doesn't think this is the official representative body of the people rebuking a president for wrongdoing. He thinks this is just the Democrat Party's game. And now he's challenging the Republicans. Yeah, go ahead and try to play our game the way we play it. I dare you. Your guy is so unpopular, there's no way you're going to get away with it. As if hear me now, as if the Republicans in the House should or shouldn't impeach Joe Biden based on the popularity of Donald Trump. You follow? The argument is impeachment for the Republicans would be the wrong play because it would hurt Donald Trump somehow. And I would submit to you that is exactly the wrong way to think about this. Donald Trump is not the consideration as to whether or not, or whoever the Republican nominee is. I don't care about the election next year. I care about right now and the Republicans in power right now and the guy we're pretending to be president right now. Do you believe that his conduct is worthy of impeachment. Maybe we need to look up the textbook definition of impeachment and why it's used, what it is, why it's deployed. Sorry, Eddie's got Google on fire today. I've got him doing multiple pieces of homework. Let's define what it means, what impeachment means in the House of Representatives. When you impeach a president, what do you see? Quick Google search.
Yep, you got it. So in the U.S., a charge of misconduct made against the holder of a public office.
All right. Has misconduct been found by Joe Biden? Do you believe Joe Biden has been involved in misconduct as president of the United States or formally as vice president of the United States? Well, let's just stick with his current job. We don't even need to talk about being vice president. Let's talk about his current job. Has he been guilty of misconduct in your view? Because I've got a few ideas. We've gone over them before. I'd say yes. Seems this poll says yes. Fetterman dares the Republicans. Go ahead and impeach him. I dare you, because your guy's got 3 or 4 indictments. Huh? You hear how unserious they are? They don't even impeachment is a joke to them. They laugh at that. Because they know when they used it, they were doing it as a purely partisan exercise. And they think that if Republicans were to move forward with impeaching Biden, they're just doing it as some sort of political gamesmanship. And I would argue that, in fact, the Republicans are kind of looking at it that way, too, because they're afraid of their own shadow. They're actually looking at this as not their job to rebuke a man for misconduct in office. They're looking at this as, what might this mean for us politically if we do it? Which is actually exactly what John Fetterman is goading them into doing, thinking politically. That's not what they should be doing. The right thing to do is to impeach this man. Consequences of the future be damned. What that may mean politically for the Republican nominee against Joe Biden in the future be damned. I don't care. Said another way, did Democrats think about their political chances when they impeached Donald Trump? Do you think they thought to themselves, if we move forward with an impeachment of Donald Trump, that could hurt us when he goes up against our nominee, who most of them thought apparently Biden, it was pretty well baked in the cake. We know this because when they tried to impeach him a second time, they were already talking about his phone call with Ukraine being targeted against his likely political opponent. This was one of the more amazing things. The Democrats telegraphed and identified that the husk was going to be their guy before he even announced he was running. If you actually remember that sequentially. Because, again, he was impeached for calling Ukraine and going, what was the deal with Hunter over there collecting a bunch of money? Can you guys dig around in that a little bit? There seems like there's some stuff. And they go, you can't make a phone call digging up political dirt against your likely political rival. And at the time, I remember going, what? What? Likely? Him? Joe Biden's 300 years old. He hasn't even said he wants to run. And by the way, when he finally did get in, he was polling next to last. Nobody wanted him. But see, this whole thing is phony. The Democrats knew all along the game. They never intended to let Donald Trump win. And so what did they do? They went forward with impeachment. They didn't think about what the political ramifications, how might the country respond? Could this hurt our chances at beating Donald Trump's second term if we impeach him once or twice? No, they didn't give a thought to that. They just did it. But sadly, Republican leadership they're afraid of guys like Fetterman. They're afraid of walking vegetables like Fetterman. And Fetterman said, go ahead. Your guy's been impeached or indicted 4 times. As if this is a political tit for tat. As if that's the reason you should weigh admonishing this current corrupt husk. We're pretending it just really frosts me. All right, to the audio. On Joe Biden's unpopularity, they're really combing over this over at CNN. Very, very upset. James Carville said you can't sugarcoat it, just like Kellyanne Conway said. It's bad.
Look, these polls seem to get at the elephant in the room when it comes to President Biden. For voters, it's his age that they're concerned about, his mental acuity, his health. What does that tell us?
Well, I guess to say the least, the polls are were not great, and it tells us that voters are expressing some apprehension here. It's pretty clear. I mean, there's not much else you can say when you look at them. I mean, I guess the best thing you could say is that if anything, they're worse for Trump. But there is apprehension out there. That's undeniable. But on the other hand, I point out we haven't lost an election since the Dobbs decision. So, we were supposed to lose in November in the off year. We didn't really. We're kind of tied. So I don't know. But the polling that I've seen or anybody else has seen is not very good. There was a memo. My friend Jim Messina said, I said, Democrats need to quit bedwetting. But my wife's already changed me to rubber sheets.
I mean, but are you saying then that you're worried, that you think the Democrats should be taking this more seriously?
Well, I mean, it's typically in the August or September before the election. I think President Reagan's numbers were not great. President Clinton's, I know, were starting to move up a little bit, the same thing as President Obama. But you can't look at this and not say that you're concerned.
Yeah, I got rubber sheets. My wife put rubber sheets on the bed. I'm wetting myself so bad over the numbers. I see ya. James Carville said this is so bad he's wetting the bed, is what he just said. Now, he says he takes comfort in one thing, though. And in fact, I'd been sitting on a story for a while that I didn't share with you from Politico, the next big abortion battleground, Pennsylvania. Less than a month after their double-digit victory on abortion rights in Ohio, Democrats are preparing to pour millions of dollars in the next big battlefront over the hot-button policy. In Pennsylvania, just over the border from Ohio, a seat on the state Supreme Court is up for grabs this November. And a Democrat who has vowed to protect women's reproductive rights is running against a Republican who's promised to defend all life under the law. Isn't that amazing? Really, when you think about it, that's a contest. I will vow to protect killing children. I will vow to protect all life under the law. And that we're even discussing it being close. Isn't that really something? A major showdown over a state Supreme Court seat signals that those once little-noticed elections have become expensive, high-stakes affairs after the fall of Roe v. Wade. A pro-Democrat super PAC quietly gearing up to make abortion the centerpiece of the campaign. Planned Parenthood has already waded into the contest, and some top Democrats in the state are even predicting that the race may be a repeat of this year's Supreme Court election in Wisconsin, in which a liberal candidate won decisively after putting abortion front and center. And James Carville just said the same thing. I got rubber sheets on my bed about Biden. It looks really bad, but the one thing we got going for us is abortion. Our party and all the women, thank God all the women like killing the babies. The Democrat women like killing the babies. And as long as women like killing babies, we're in a catbird seat, man. So he's not wrong. He basically said these numbers for Biden are terrible, but the one thing they've got going for them is, man, do they love killing babies. And as long as this country is obsessed with the ability to kill babies, boy, howdy, are we in high cotton. That's the sad reality. Van Jones combing over the Biden numbers.
Van Jones, can I take you to our backyard barbecue table in Minnesota on Saturday night with our friends who are saying, just hearing from many people from many different walks of life, that many are not feeling that data. What Jim's saying is true, but they're not living it. They're not feeling it. And there are liberals who are saying to me, I'm thinking about Nikki Haley a lot. And I just wonder what you think about that, Van, as you try to figure out why those facts that are good for Biden are not translating in these polls.
if Jim Messina says that we're bedwetters, invest in Pampers and Depends, because a lot of people are terrified that Joe Biden is in real trouble and that you can't talk about it.
More wedding.
So that's what's going on. Listen, Jim is right. Anybody who wants to argue against Jim Messina is going to waste their time. He's got to have the right numbers, the right data. And it may, in fact, be true that a year from now things look very different because there's been a year of a real campaign and all this kind of stuff. But right now, today, I think a lot of Democrats look at these numbers and say the whispers are finally showing up in this data. People are talking behind their hand. They worry about Joe Biden. Joe Biden's like that grandpa that you love, that you believe in, you owe a lot, but you start to wonder, would you give this grandpa a high-stress job for 6 more years, or would you want something else for him? That's what's being talked about. And people are scared to come out and talk and say anything about it. But I think it's important for us to have this conversation now. I think this may be the bottom for Joe Biden. He may go up as the economy improves. But right now, the economy is getting better, and fears about the economy are getting worse. We've got to be honest as Democrats that there's real pain out there at the base of our party. People still don't feel these policies yet. And we're going to have to make the case stronger. We can't just say, don't worry about it. We have to make a stronger case for the help that's on the way than we have so far.
Just classic. Classic Democrat bubble punditry. Our policies are working, the economy's improving, and yet all these idiots say they're worried about the economy. So maybe it's just that we got to wait until things get better. Maybe this is rock bottom and things are going to get better soon. So look, I don't know what's going on here. Was that Poppy Harlow there with Van Jones? She says, this is another thing CNN in this poll is trotting out. They're pushing this one hard. I saw this at the New York Post yesterday. As for the Republican field, did you hear what she just said as the lead-up question to Van Jones? I've been at the barbecue. I was out barbecuing on Labor Day with my friends, all my liberal girlfriends, and we were having our white wine spritzers and Chardonnays, and we were at the cricket match, and the girls leaned in and they said, I'm so concerned about Joe Biden, I might even vote Nikki Haley. Did you hear that? Do you believe that?
In Minnesota? No.
Yeah, no, I did say to you, did I not point out to you after the first debate that the abortion question, which is something that is going to be a problem for the Republicans, there's no doubt about it. There was one person who knocked that out of the park. There was only one candidate who was really exceptional at handling it, and I think there probably is only one of them that can do it with authority simply because she has the reproductive organs to carry a baby, and that's Nikki Haley. And she did do very well answering that question. She was exceptional, actually. She calmed people's fears. She tackled that abortion answer in a way that the men in the field haven't done. She spoke, first of all, from a place of empathy and it might be worth even revisiting this answer from Nikki Haley. I don't know if we can go find it, but maybe we can't. But her answer on abortion and the issue of a nationwide ban on abortion was in 2 parts. And she started by saying, having compassion and not making women the enemy here was important. But then she went on to say, this isn't a real issue. We don't have the votes to pass something like that. We'll likely never have a majority like that to even accomplish something like that. So let's not make up this manufactured thing that doesn't exist. Just as a reminder, I did note that this woman's answer is possibly what Poppy or whoever in that clip is talking about. Just keep an eye on this. Just keep an eye that you have people on CNN, liberal women pundits saying, we were talking around the barbecue and some of my ladies said, I'm so worried about Biden, I could vote for Nikki Haley. And that was a story yesterday at the New York Post. Donors are looking seriously at Nikki Haley as the option. Out of nowhere. Have you heard this? Have you been seeing these headlines that Nikki Haley is now suddenly the most attractive Republican option for a lot of people?
I have, yes. She's on the come.
Now there is no polling evidence to suggest that's true amongst Republicans. And I'm not piling on her. I'm just saying I don't see any evidence to suggest the voters feel that way on the Republican side. But left-wing media keeps telling us that Nikki Haley is the one that they could maybe warm to. They could see their way to her. Just interesting. Yeah. So, and I think it all stems from this answer on abortion. Listen.
This is talking about the fact that unelected justices didn't need to decide something this personal because it's personal for every woman and man. Now it's been put in the hands of the people. That's great. When it comes to a federal ban, let's be honest with the American people and say it will take 60 Senate votes. It will take a majority of the House. So in order to do that, let's find consensus. Can't we all agree that we should ban late-term abortions? Can't we all agree that we should encourage adoptions? Can't we all agree that doctors and nurses who don't believe in abortion shouldn't have to perform them? Can't we all agree that contraception should be available? And can't we all agree that we are not going to put a woman in jail or give her the death penalty if she gets an abortion? Let's treat this like a respectful issue that it is and humanize the situation and stop demonizing the situation.
All right, so that right there, that last sentence, believe it or not, and I know this is very, very hard for a lot of you to believe, but it's true. Millions, untold millions of liberal women have been told they're going to be thrown in prison if they go somewhere to have an abortion where it's legal. You know, if you live in a state where they have passed bans on abortion and a woman gets pregnant and she goes out of state to have an abortion, there are, do you understand this? There are women in this country right now who believe they will be thrown in prison in certain states if they go out of state to have an abortion. Do you know that that's true?
Oh, yes, Chris. Just like the Medicare and Social Security thing, it's absolutely true.
And so when Nikki Haley says the words on the Republican debate stage, let us all agree that we will not jail or prosecute women. Do you understand that there were liberal women that went, what's this now? A Republican who says they're not going to jail us if we're... I know that sounds silly, but that's why that answer was so powerful. From the New York Post, Nikki Haley writes this guy called Ryan King. Nikki Haley is GOP's best chance at beating Biden in 2024. And they're quoting from this same CNN poll. Haley, 51, had a 6 percentage point lead over Biden. I put those stats up on social media yesterday. Remember, that was the head-to-head, the entire Republican field versus Biden. And they're keying in on the fact that Haley, this is of registered voters, had the best outcome versus Biden. Registered voters, not likely voters. In key distinction, this entire poll is just of the universe of people who are on voter rolls. And you and I both know there are millions of people on voter rolls that don't vote. So keep that in mind. But just a notable shift in the dialogue in the last 24 hours. Deep worries about Biden wetting the bed, rubber sheets, and Nikki Haley all of a sudden. We're keeping a sharp eye here. Okay, it's time to start thinking about your financial future. Never too early. Here we are in early 2023. What are your goals? Have you visited your financial situation with a pro that knows what they're doing, making plans for your future yet? Well, if you haven't, may I recommend Jason Perrett to you. Jason is a financial advisor at Eagle Wealth Planning, and he wanted me to talk with you in this audience. He values this audience. He's a listener of this podcast, and he said, I want to reach your audience. I want to help them plan their financial future, providing financial services to people who want to truly achieve financial independence, and he doesn't care where you are. If you are a accomplished entrepreneur, if you're a professional, a retiree, even if you're a young person and you just want to start the lifelong goal of financial independence and you don't quite know where to get started, Jason can do that for you. He's a fiduciary. He's dedicated to providing clients with complete wealth management and investment services, along with highly personalized professional assistance. Jason will regularly revisit your plan, and that's one of the key things about this business is regularly checking in and assessing where things are, making sure you're on track, assessing your risk tolerance, strategies to provide you the high level of service that you would expect from someone in this position. And you can call him anytime you'd like, 816-394-8117. He's extremely available and accessible at all times, 816-394-8117. That's Jason Perrett, financial advisor at Eagle Wealth Planning, 1717 Paddock Drive in Kearney, Missouri. It doesn't matter where you live in the country. If you're listening to my voice and you need some help with financial planning, you want somebody that you know you're going to be on board with, because you listen to this show, Jason's your man, all right? So it's Jason at eaglewealthplanning.com. His website is linked on mine at chrisstigall.com if you'd like to go there and link up. Securities and advisory services offered through Cetera Advisors, LLC, member FINRA SIPC, a broker-dealer and a registered investment advisor. Cetera is under separate ownership from any other named entity. Old friend of the show, Peter Navarro, yesterday, convicted of contempt of Congress by the same D.C. types who will undoubtedly convict Donald Trump. D.C. is most likely where Trump will be convicted too. This is not a surprise. This does not shock me that D.C. juries are ruling against Trump officials. A jury in Washington convicting former Trump administration official following a trial that lasted just over a day. Peter Navarro's defense team called no witnesses. Sentencing set for January. Navarro faces a maximum of 1 year in prison and a fine of $100,000 for each count. Speaking with reporters outside the court, Navarro and his attorneys indicated they would appeal the verdict, calling the prosecution a landmark case about separation of powers. Prosecutors alleged Navarro acted like he was above the law when he defied the request from the now expired House Select Committee for documents and testimony in February 2022. At the time, congressional investigators were interested in Navarro's efforts to formulate a plan to delay the certification of the 2020 presidential election results. Congress believed that Mr. Navarro had information about what happened on January 6th. Now, this is the White House trade representative, Peter Navarro, who we're supposed to believe is a linchpin for January 6th. And his attorneys are like, Peter Navarro had nothing to do with January 6th. He wasn't there on January 6th. What are we talking about here? And Peter Navarro's ultimate contention was that he had executive privilege. He was not going to participate in this stupid witch hunt that this select committee on January 6th was engaged in because his business dealings with the president were privileged, executive privilege information. That was Navarro's defense. And they wanted to tell the jury that Trump told Navarro to invoke executive privilege protections against the subpoena at the time. But prosecutors wouldn't let him. So the jury was never told that Navarro and his official position was that he and President Trump at the time spoke, and Trump said, that's executive privilege. Navarro didn't take the stand in his own defense, as I said, but in the evidentiary hearing on executive privilege last week, he told the judge it was clear Trump invoked the protection in a 2022 phone call with Navarro, but the judge was unconvinced. Prosecutors told the jury yesterday Navarro's potential belief the former president asserted the privilege does not matter. Outside the presence of the jury, Navarro's defense team took issue with prosecutors' references to January 6th, telling the judge this case is not about the riot at the Capitol. And to repeatedly try to link Navarro to what they think happened on January 6th is inappropriate. The government argued, however, that the January 6th committee authority and purpose was born from events of that day. So Peter Navarro, who's guilty of being the most outspoken critic of China, who is one of the most pointed and effective communicators and advocates of Donald Trump, is the first one to be roped up and convicted ultimately by a jury for violating the subpoena requests of the Select January 6th Committee. This is the Adam Kinzinger, Liz Cheney, Adam Schiff Committee that we all love and admire so much, now defunct. What do you say about it? It's a D.C. jury. He was not allowed to tell the jury that Trump told him this is executive privilege stuff you can't share. Don't go testify. It's outrageous. This is a trade representative for Donald Trump. Think of what we were. Well, you get it. I mean, he's going to appeal. I wish him the best. I hope it makes its way to the Supreme Court. What do you say about it? This is the first in a string of these. Howard Stern one of the great disappointments in broadcast history is to see what's happened to Howard Stern. I was never privy to Howard Stern as a kid growing up. I don't know, maybe if I was, I'd feel differently about him. Where I grew up, Howard Stern didn't exist. He was syndicated across the country, but it was largely big cities. He was obviously very popular up and down the eastern seaboard and out west, but a lot of Midwest cities didn't, except Chicago and maybe Detroit and places. But a lot of Midwestern, medium-sized, smaller markets didn't carry Stern. So, we had all of our own kind of versions of these kinds of morning shows, but I didn't know Stern growing up. So I wasn't even really aware of him in any meaningful way until Private Parts, the book and the movie and that sort of thing, believe it or not. I know there are a lot of you in this audience who grew up listening to him. And, when I moved to Philadelphia, I know that people that I called friends would talk about listening to him still. He's gone to satellite radio, and they just love him because they remember his irreverence and his shock value and all of this. I don't know what these people must think of him today, that he has turned into this terrified shell of a human being. This from the New York Post. Radio host Howard Stern recently admitted his paranoia over COVID has gotten him into a fight with his wife. This week, during a segment on his show, he conceded that he's paranoid and neurotic, especially when it comes to the virus, and noted that his wife, Beth, is less so. As he explained, this has led to tension and arguments with her as media outlets have been warning about a new strain of the COVID virus. The topic came up when a guest caller asked the radio host whether he thought it was risky to return to the studio for his show amid the new warnings about another COVID outbreak. Stern admitted the fear of getting sick had been weighing on him and his relationship. He said, "I'm going crazy with this. My wife yelled at me last night. We got into a fight." He added, how paranoid I am about getting COVID. I haven't gotten it, and I'm pretty safe, and I really don't want to get it. The radio host vented about people telling him to lighten up about the disease, stating he would be the one to have a strong case of it because he's older and lucky like that. Stern says everywhere he goes, "Don't worry, it's just a cold for me, but I know it'll probably be way worse." You know what I mean? I'll completely fall apart. Mentioning how his wife has less to worry about than him. My wife's considerably younger than me, as you might have heard. And, she's not as concerned about getting COVID as I am because, I'm an older dude. He's 69, Beth 51. Beth has a bunch of plans. She's going to a wedding shower. She had lunch to go to with a friend, dinner, blah, blah, blah. So, we're making an effort. We go out to restaurants. We go to a concert. We've been out there. I haven't gotten COVID. And I'm like, you know what? I get it, he said. Then all of a sudden they announce there's a new strain of COVID. It's on the rise. And, people are being hospitalized. It's time to go back into lockdown. And I'm like, you mean I'm just emerging and now I got to go back into lockdown? He explained the argument with his wife over COVID. She goes, "That's what you do every time I say I'm going to go do something, you bring up COVID." Giving his reply to her, he said, "I'm just telling you I'm scared. Am I wrong?" I don't know. My dad is 71, which is kind of weird. That Howard Stern is 69. He's just a little younger than my dad. And my dad doesn't think a minute about it. I can tell you that. He didn't want to get sick, naturally, but that is not on my dad's mind. I don't know. Is that on your parents' mind, Fast Eddie? I know you once said your mother, in the height of the whole thing, was concerned about it, but does your dad sit around thinking a lot about it? Maybe they do. I'm not picking on you if you do, I guess, but it certainly undercuts the image that Howard Stern used to portray, I think, doesn't it?
Oh, yeah. My parents actually are completely... My mom was the worst during it, but she's even... After having it and beating it 2 or 3 times, I think they're not scared of it at all. They're living their life.
I don't know how you live a life, to your point. How do you live a life when you live in terror? I'd suggest, but I'm sure he wouldn't listen, that a little spirituality might help him. Maybe a little faith. Well, there's a lot that Howard Stern probably should spend some time pontificating if I had him here just mano a mano by ourselves, not on the air, but just personally. There's a lot about, well, never mind. I won't go theological, but I'll just say, people that have that kind of terror, I've said this before, I find they're the most manipulated because they have nothing else but this kind of earthly existence to cling to. There's nothing that gives them hope beyond their existence right here, right now, in the moment. And when you live a life that way, that's what I've always thought about people. You know, even like atheists, agnostics, people that are, their religion, blah. Like, even if you're that dismissive, and even if we're all wrong, and you're right, and there's nothing, like what gives you hope? Why do you even get up and bother in the morning if your attitude is this is all there is? And all I have is this little existence here, and I've got to keep a hold of it as long as I possibly can. What a miserable way to lead your life. I've always thought, you know, regardless of your theological bent, I've thought if you don't have anything else to aspire to or look forward to or hope for, but, I hope I don't get sick. I don't want to, just clinging constantly to the buoy called life. Ugh. No, thank you. Excellence in dentistry. That's what you're going to get at Williamsburg Dental. My friend Bob Spinato is back on the phone. He's in Broomall, just off the Blue Route. And with 2 new associates, now you can expand and offer more hours, maybe evening hours, possibly weekends, Bob.
Yeah, one of the things that I told them from early on when they started with me was the value of not only their own time, but other people's times. And they run on a similar schedule that I do. If you've got a 1 o'clock appointment, you're in their chair at 1 o'clock. And it's something that across the board at Williamsburg Dental, we really pride ourselves on, whether it's an appointment with the hygienist or whether it's an appointment with one of our doctors. The other thing is we now have some expanded hours in the evenings, and even there's some discussion about opening again on some Saturdays for services.
Yeah,
so,
but not you. You're fishing. You're not kidding anybody. It's not you going to be working on Saturday. Come on, Stu.
Well, I'm in my 33rd year, and it should be the young guns.
That's right. You've earned it. You've earned it.
I feel like I have. Thank you.
Pick up the phone or go online, make that appointment, 610-353-2700 or williamsburg-dental.com. You remember yesterday the story, hey, we're going to have the new booster just in time for fall. Before the end of the month, yahoo, a new booster. Who's running out? I just wrote about this at the Harump Society yesterday. Shouldn't we just have isn't patience a virtue? Shouldn't there be just an at minimum 5-year breathing pause, wait a minute when you pump out a new pharmaceutical? To me, if they say, hey, we got this new drug, I'm instantly inclined to say, I'm going to wait at least 5 years to see how it flushes out. That's me. That's not a medical standard. That's just me. But boy, not with this shot. Every time they roll out with a new version of this thing to inject, there are people doing cartwheels, and they want everybody from 6 months of age up to take it. Dr. Peter McCollough has consistently been the fly in their ointment in the sales pitch on the shot and the masking. He is one of the leading voices throughout COVID we've relied on over and over again, and they're cranking it back up again. You got the president with masks again. The shot talk is back, Dr. McCollough. He's at Substack, by the way, petermcculloughmd.substack.com. He's on Getter and X, formerly Twitter. And by the way, you've been behind yet another study. Every time I put anything on social media involving Dr. McCollough being on this show, I immediately get thrown off. It's great to see you again, Dr. McCollough.
Thanks for having me. I'm sorry you're getting thrown off, but the fall vaccines is not like the return of football. People just want to be left alone.
Yes.
That's what people are telling me. Say, Dr. McCollough, when am I going to be left alone on this?
Yes. Talk to me quickly about, I'm sure I know where this is going, but when they say there's a new booster that everyone really should take 6 months and up, what does Dr. McCollough say?
These boosters are untested. They are coded against a variant called XBB 1.5, which is now nearly completely extinct. It's less than 5% of strains and going away. The new strain is called Eris. It's a very mild strain. My mom just had it in independent living. It's like a common cold. She got through it with over-the-counter supplements and just, the virucidal nasal sprays and washes work fine, and start the nasal sprays and gargles right away. And there's absolutely no need for this vaccine. There's no fever. There's no pulmonary involvement. The hospitalizations we're hearing about, those are just because they started testing everybody in the hospital. Yeah. Remember, once somebody has this, they test positive for months. So what they're claiming to be hospital cases could probably just be somebody who had it months ago.
Where do you stand on immunity today? People that have had this in the past, or maybe once or twice even. How long lasting is that, have you found, as that's been studied?
The natural immunity seems to last forever. A really good paper last year, October 2022, Chin and colleagues, U.S. prison system, 59,000 prisoners, 17,000 staff. Once we've been through the Delta and Omicron outbreaks, if you get it again, zero risk of hospitalization and death. And believe me, these prisoners would love to take a break and go to the hospital. Zero hospitalizations and deaths. So I tell you, I don't have any worries at all in my practice. I easily manage this, similar to the common cold.
You, by the way, have been one of the more pilloried medical professionals throughout COVID. How have you weathered that? Are you on the other side of it, or are you still getting it?
No, I've never had anybody of my stature, a chief of medicine or a dean, anybody who's had any considerable publication in COVID. They've never challenged me. They've never had a discussion. I've never even had an email or a text. So, and when I've approached the American College of Cardiology, the American College of Obstetrics and Gynecology, they don't respond. They don't respond even for a discussion on this. When I testified in the Senate 3 times, we had seats for Fauci, Walensky, Shah, Murthy. They didn't show up. They will not show up and face any type of scientific discussion on what's going on.
But yeah, you professionally, I mean, you've been, discredited, I know, vocally by many people in your profession, haven't you?
No, not successfully at all. There hasn't been a single person of standing who's attempted to discredit me. Not a single person.
Yeah, I don't mean it's worked. I just mean there have been attempts to call people like you nuts or kooky or wacky. Same with Scott Adams, Dr. Malone. There are a handful of you who were consistent throughout this that, you were always dismissed as...
I'm different, though. I'm practicing medicine.
Yeah. I'm
the most published person in my field in the world in history. The other people you mentioned, they're not highly qualified. They don't have publications. So, no, I've been unassailable. There's been no one who's approached me on things at all.
Dr. McCollough, the mask study that came out from the NIH, I was a little surprised to read, saying that prolonged mask use in many of these masks, cancers could develop and harm to organs if prolonged use, said this NIH study. What of that?
Well, humans were not designed to breathe air through masks. We worry about the particulate matter coming, the fibers from the mask going into the lungs, bacteria, fungi, other organisms getting stuck in the mask and being breathed back. Our CDC says we only need to wear a mask when we go into hospital respiratory isolation and face a sick patient. That's the only time. So we just follow what the CDC says. There's nothing in the CDC directions currently that say that we should wear a mask in any other circumstance. I don't wear a mask in clinic. I see sick patients all day long. I don't wear a mask at home or anywhere I go. And if I don't have to wear a mask, certainly kids at school shouldn't have to wear them.
Do you anticipate future? It always makes me shudder when I hear people say the next pandemic. They'll say it as such a matter of fact, like it's something. It's like it's coming. And there are a lot of people in this country that are so gun shy about what we've gone through. Everyone's just waiting for the next kind of, authoritarian crackdown on all of us. Where are you mentally with that? The next thing.
We should take it seriously. Tedros at WHO and Bill Gates and Peter Hotez at Baylor in Houston, a vaccine developer, as well as Fauci, they all say there's going to be another pandemic. They said it's going to, COVID is a warm-up for the next pandemic? Well, I'll tell you this much. If there's going to be a next pandemic, it will be another man-made virus. There are way too many biolabs out there. Gain-of-function research is going on outside the United States. And the U.S. Agencies have their hand in this. You know, for the Wuhan, China creation of SARS-CoV-2, the National Security Administration, the Department of Energy, the CIA, they all have statements on their websites about this. Why do government agencies indicate that they had a hand in all of this? So, yeah, I mean, there could be another pandemic, but if it does, it's going to be another government biolab mishap.
Do you think that we have a responsibility, just as average citizens out there, not trained professionals such as yourself, but do average citizens have a responsibility, God forbid the next one, to stand up and say, no, I'm not participating this way again. I'm not allowing the church, the school to be shut down. I'm not wearing masks into Home Depot to shop. I'm just not doing it. Do we have a responsibility to do that?
You know, people have the responsibility to exercise their own judgment. I think what they've learned is they cannot trust government agencies or the mainstream media to tell them what to do. So, you know, masks have been thoroughly studied. Over 80 studies, Cochrane analysis, Thomas Jefferson was the first author. Public masking has no benefit whatsoever. Even our CDC says that. So we should not return to public masking. Social distancing lockdowns, they didn't work. A paper by Macri and colleagues have shown this. What works is early treatment. If everybody got outfitted with a dilute iodine nasal spray or xylitol, these are all commercially available now, Scope or Listerine, do that twice a day preventively if you're around sick people, and then every 4 hours when sick, and then follow a reasonable treatment protocol. McCollough protocol is the standard for the country and for the world. That's available at the Association of American Physicians and Surgeons, AAPSonline.org. We laid all this out for the country. That's what needs to happen. People say, Dr. McCollough, what should we do? I said, listen, follow what I tell you to do, and we won't lock down. We will get through the next crisis, and we'll avoid all the government-directed disasters. We never vaccinate our way out of a pandemic. I would never expect a vaccine to work. I was the only person in the public, as a public figure, who published before the vaccines came out, questioning them. I published in The Hill an op-ed that's really widely read now. It's called The Great Gamble of the COVID-19 Pandemic. Do you know, not a single doctor, not a single senator, congressman, or anybody in the White House questioned these vaccines. I was the only one.
Dr. Peter McCollough with us. He's Peter McCollough, MD, on Substack. Peter McCollough, MD. Look him up and read what he writes. As you kind of look back over the last 3 years, is there a particular, I don't know, we're thinking about politics. We're thinking about the Republican primary. And so I ask professionals who, like you, who have assessed where we were, is it fair? Should voters look at people like Donald Trump and his presidency and the attempt to establish the COVID task force and 15 days to slow the spread? Is it fair for voters to view that harshly, critically, say he should have, could have done better? How do you view that period of time as a medical professional?
It was pivotal. If the pandemic was handled differently, we wouldn't be in this position. So I could just say this much. If I was an executive in the White House, the very first thing I would have done is I would have commissioned an investigation, my own investigation of where this virus came from. I would have had a special investigator, call Fauci and Francis Collins, Peter Daszak at the EcoHealth Alliance, Ralph Barrick at the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, get all the U.S. players involved here and get the facts on where this came from, review the papers that Ralph Barrick published, stating that he created it in 2015, clearly identified that that's the U.S. creation in the Wuhan lab. This was all, we could figure this out very, very quickly, ask for what this virus is and what's the best leads in handling it. As I've testified in the Senate, I would have established, as an executive, I would have established 4 teams. A team on reducing the spread of the illness. They would have quickly figured out that the nasal sprays and gargles work and that masks don't work. A team on early treatment. That was most important, how to treat people at home to prevent hospitalization and death. and clearly doctors like myself that figured this out quickly. And then the third team on hospital treatment, we should have had a monthly update on advances in the hospital. So everything we used as an outpatient should be continued in the hospital, and then figure out additional ways of having survivability in the hospital without the ventilator. And then the fourth team on vaccines. And if there was a safe and effective vaccine, maybe for nursing home patients, that could move forward. But I would have had 4 teams. I would have run it. I definitely wouldn't have Fauci in charge because he's not a practicing doctor. Every doctor who got on TV, a criteria would be they would have to face patients with COVID and have the credibility of treating patients with COVID. And I would always work in teams. And I definitely wouldn't have signed off on the vaccines for sure.
As I look,
that was a giant gamble. They were genetic products. They didn't have a chance of working. And so no, if I would have led the White House, I think this pandemic would have been over within about 2 years. We could have saved at least 2/3 of the people who died, spared the hospitalizations, never would have locked down. And I was writing all this in the Hill, op-eds in the Hill, in the early part of the pandemic. So I'm not Monday morning quarterbacking this. I called this ahead of time.
Yeah, again, I've had people who say that Trump's handling of COVID is why he's not qualified to be president again, as Republicans, and they point to somebody like Ron DeSantis in Florida and say he handled it better. And I'm just asking you from a medical point of view, do you see a president of the United States at that time versus a governor at that time and how they handled this as entirely different matters, one better than the other, just as people are trying to sort that out?
I think anybody running for president should have, typical presidency has foreign affairs, the economy, education. They have some standard platform things. One of their standard platform things is the pandemic and pandemic response. What did they do? How did their understanding evolve? None of the people running are qualified doctors. So how did they work with qualified doctors to come up with the best policies? And they all need a fair review. I've volunteered to all the administrations. I said, listen, I'm the most published person in the field on this. I'm the one who's done more media time than Fauci, than anybody out there. I said, I'm willing to help any one of these administrations get their act together with respect to pandemic response. What some of these campaigns are doing, they're trying to ignore it like it doesn't exist.
Yeah.
And Americans are furious about this. Did you see that one where Tucker Carlson asked one of the candidates, one of the Republican candidates, he goes, well, have you taken the COVID vaccine? And the guy leans into Tucker and says, well, how many shots have you taken, Tucker? He goes, none.
Yeah, and the crowd erupted. Yeah.
I know.
Dr. Peter McCollough, you're a heart guy by training, so specific to the heart, this virus itself, as well as the shots, where do you come down on how it has treated the heart?
Well, let's take 2020, where there were no vaccines. And this is really important. What happened during 2020? There was an extensive evaluation of whether or not the virus could cause the heart. In a paper by Daniels and JAMA, they screened all the Big Ten athletes as they got COVID to see if it affected the heart. And they came up with a handful of cases that maybe there was some heart involvement with COVID in the young athletes. No hospitalizations, no deaths. So they just gave up on it. There was a big paper from Israel by Tuvali and colleagues that did not find myocarditis with COVID virus any more than with the parvovirus or influenza or anything else. And so they gave up on it. The U.S. military gave up on looking for myocarditis. So with community COVID, myocarditis, basically significant myocarditis was trivial. Then the vaccines come in. The FDA tells us in 2021 the vaccines cause myocarditis. The FDA comes out with an official warning the vaccines cause myocarditis, and then we see an explosion. And Chris, we have 800 papers in the peer-reviewed literature of myocarditis, fatal cases by autopsy. It's an absolute disaster. The vaccines clearly cause myocarditis, and it's a far greater concern with the vaccines than the respiratory illness.
And on that, because I'm really fascinated by that statement, the vaccines clearly cause myocarditis. You're not saying in every one, but those who have developed myocarditis, it is likely that the vaccine could be a culprit.
Yes, well, in two papers now, one by Mansugian and the other one by Buren, the number is 2.5%. So 2.5% of people who take these shots, and that's on shot 2 or shot 3, 2.5%, they get myocarditis, they get heart damage. And then a smaller percentage of them later on have a cardiac arrest.
And how many of those people today, if you took the shot at any point, if you took the initial 2 doses or the first but not the second or whatever, or you've taken the whole panoply of them since, if people are now worried about myocarditis, how long, I guess, the distance of time between having taken these and now, what do we know about the evolution of time? Or are you always should you always be leery of it, if that makes sense?
We're learning, Chris, a paper by Brogan recently from Italy showed the spike protein, which is the lethal product of the genetic vaccines. It's circulating in the bloodstream, Chris, for at least 6 months. That's as long as they've looked. So can you believe having this stuff in your bloodstream for 6 months after you take a shot? It could be there for years. The human body can't break it down. This case that really worries me is Oscar Cabrera Adames, the basketball player for the Dominican Republic, an international player. He takes the shots in 2021. He has a cardiac arrest during the game. They shock him. He recovers. He tweets out. He said, listen, I took the vaccines. I got vaccine myocarditis, and it caused my cardiac arrest. That's in 2021. He tries to return to the league in 2023, and he dies on a medical stress test. That's 2 years after the shots. So I think that's the case to watch. I'm really worried these athletes have taken some minor heart damage, and then even years later, they could have a cardiac arrest.
So I'll drop it on this. I'm just curious. If someone has had a heart event recently, is one of the first things you would ask, and otherwise they seem healthy, right? They've never really had health issues before, but then they suddenly have some kind of heart issue, heart attack, sudden heart attack. Is one of the first questions you ask, because I'll just be honest, it is me. I've known of a few men who have had heart attacks lately, and the first thing I think is, did they take that damn shot? Is that a fair question, or is that nuts?
It's a fair question. It's the first thing I asked. I still Tucker Carlson when DeMar Hamlin went down for the Bills. I was on TV, a day later. I said the first thing I asked as a cardiologist: did you take the shots? Which ones did you take, and when did you take them? Because the shots cause cardiac arrest. They cause accelerated atherosclerosis and heart attacks. They cause blood pressure problems, dizziness, passing out. They cause a ton of cardiovascular problems. So the first question you ask is, did you take the COVID vaccine?
And going forward, is there anything anyone can do about it now? All right, I've done it. I regret it. Now what? Or is it too late?
The good thing, just like I brought the world the first treatment protocol, I've brought the first detoxification protocol and published in the peer-reviewed literature. So it's called Base Spike Detoxification, published in the Journal of American Physician Surgeons. 3 things you can get over the counter that do degrade the spike protein that's stuck in the body. One is nattokinase, 2,000 units twice a day, bromelain, 500 milligrams once a day, and curcumin, 500 milligrams twice a day. This is on my website, on my Substack, and messaged out very clearly. This is going viral, by the way, all over the place. It's called Base Spike Detoxification. It gives people the best hope of getting this stuff out of their body.
Wow. And it's all over-the-counter stuff, by the way.
All over the counter. The Wellness Company, which I advise as the chief scientific officer, they have probably the best spike product. The nattokinase part of this is called Spike Support, and then you can add the bromelain and curcumin. And that's available at twc.health.
People are going to be very excited to hear this, and they're going to want to know where to find more. So you say the best place to – people are hearing this and going, wait, say it again. Okay, so for people that didn't hear this, where do they go?
You can search me. Yeah, you can search me anywhere on the Internet. I'm the most cited profile doctor on the entire Internet right now. So type in Dr. McCollough, and it'll come up. But if you go to petermcculloughmd.com, that'll take you everywhere. My Substack is Substack/Peter McCullough MD. And my podcast, America Out Loud Talk Radio, McCullough Report, we have featured Base Spike Detoxification very heavily. Ever since this peer-reviewed publication come out, it's been highly cited. It offers people the best opportunity to detoxify, no more shots. It may take 3 to 12 months of taking these 3 supplements plus additional medicines, but we're getting people better. We're seeing this empirically in our office. And we'll apply as much data to this as we can in the future. You know, the government is investing $0 in helping the vaccine victims. So it's all based on, clinical judgment.
Dr. Peter McCollough, we have loved your voice. We continue to rely on it, and we thank you so much for your time today. 20 years in business. Congratulations to Mike Lindell and MyPillow. 80 million pillows sold over those 20 years. Can you believe that number? Well, Mike and his team at MyPillow, they want to thank each and every one of you for giving them such success over these many years, and now they want to celebrate by giving you the lowest price in MyPillow history. He told me that if you call or log on to MyPillow.com or call them today, you'll get a queen-size MyPillow to celebrate their 20 years in business for just $19.98. 20 years and just about $20 with tax. How about that? $19.98, that's it, for a queen-size MyPillow. Do you know the regular price of this thing is almost $50 more? So you're talking about a $50 discount. By the way, for the king size, you'll get it for just $10 more, $29.98. It's a huge sale. And incidentally, in addition to these pillows that are deeply discounted right now, you go to MyPillow.com and you'll get a discount using my name, Chris Podcast. Use that as your promo code, Chris Podcast. Click on the radio listener square and enter that. And you're talking about mattress toppers, pet beds, mattresses, my slippers, sheets, and of course the pillows, so much more. You can try it on. If you've gone to MyPillow.com and you've thought to yourself, maybe it's a little expensive, now's the time. Celebrate 20 years with Mike Lindell. And know this, 10-year warranty. 10 years they warranty these things. So if they ever wear out or you have trouble, you can exchange for brand new. 60 days they let you take this stuff home, and if you don't like it, you can send it back for a full refund. So you got nothing to lose but a great night's sleep on MyPillow products. Colleagues I've sent these my slippers to, they love them. Christine loves hers. The sheets are comfortable. The towels are super absorbent. Even old Dean loves his dog bed. And we drink my coffee here at the office every day. I just brewed some this morning. MyPillow.com, promo code Chris Podcast, all right? With that warranty fully intact, or call 800-932-5056. 800-932-5056, promo code Chris Podcast. Or MyPillow.com, promo code Chris Podcast, if you please to save. We've had him on the show a few times before. Dr. Joseph Ladapo, down there in Florida, the Surgeon General of Florida, held a press conference yesterday, and oh my, he is not holding back. He continues to tell people, do not take this stupid shot. Don't take the damn booster either.
There's a new vaccine that's coming around the corner, new mRNA COVID-19 vaccine, and there's essentially no evidence for it. There's been no clinical trial done in human beings showing that it benefits people. There's been no clinical trial showing that it is a safe product for people. And not only that, but then there are a lot of red flags. So something that you don't hear much about, but we'll be talking more about, is that there are multiple studies now from around the world, Brazil, I think Australia, United States, that show that over time, these vaccines, these mRNA COVID-19 products, actually increase your chances of contracting COVID-19. That's not normal.
Wow. Don't take it. There's no evidence for it, no clinical trial done in human beings. I can't imagine that there are people that run out and take it, but you know that there are. You probably know some of them. All right, that's going to do it for this week. We're going to put a bow on this one. Now, listen, today's it for the Harumph Society sale. If you're not a Harumpher and you've been wanting to be or you've been curious about it, I can't make it cheaper. I shut that down today. Go to chrisstigall.com right now. Click on the Harumph Society and join the fastest growing political newsletter on Substack. Join the thousands that have jumped in the pool. And by the way, it's the last day to get it at this price. So if you want to maybe get a membership for a friend or a relative or a loved one as a gift, this would be an outstanding gift in advance. All right. The Faith and Freedom Summit is Monday. Get your tickets at 990theanswer.com. On Sunday, just before the Eagles game, 2 o'clock, Uptown Theater at Westchester. Ray and I and his play Tommy and Me. I hope I'll see you there. Busy weekend.
The Chris DeGaulle Show podcast.